Alrighty, so I hope this is the last time I'm going to say that unfortunately we have MLS game during the international break this season because unless we have some makeup game that is scheduled during the October international break, I don't think we're gonna have MLS game that is gonna be happening during the international break. And maybe this might even be the last time we have this ordeal because if you want to believe what Tata Martino said a couple of weeks ago of how the league is working on trying to make sure they do not have MLS regular season game happening during the international break, then yeah, this could be the last time we would see this. And thank God for that because I know there are certain teams that are very frustrated because of this, and it just feels like every time when this does happen, I can understand why there are some teams that will cry foul the fact that they're going to be missing some of their key players due to international duty, and especially we're now at the time of the period where this is the home stretch of the season, and how they can't afford to punt these games because of players missing during international break. Yeah, it's understandable why I think the league has to do something in terms of trying to make sure there's not going to be games anymore happening during the international break. But that being said, we do have 5 games that's going to be happening this weekends over the international break. 4 of them is going to be on Saturday, with one happening on Sunday. And we start off with the first one, which is DC United versus the San Jose Earthquakes. And because this is a matchup that is happening, I have to wear my San Jose Clash jersey. I mean, have to because of the way that this is the first ever matchup in MLS history. I have to go retro with that. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 18-8 and 15 in favor of the Quakes, as this is going to be the first of 2 games that's going to be happening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. As I said, all-time meeting, 18-8 and 15 in favor of the Quakes. Now, players on international duty, because again, this is the week where a lot of these teams are going to be missing guys that are on international break, and I wrote the list out, and this is according to the MLS website. So I'm not sure how accurate it is. There's been times where it's not very accurate, but this is the list of players that's gonna be missing for DC. You got Eric Davis for Panama, Jose Fajardo for Panama, and Andy Nahar for Honduras. Now for the Quakes, Wissani Buddha will be with Burkina Faso, Kate Cal with the U.S., Carlos Gorezo with Ecuador, and Miguel Traeco with Peru. So there's no doubt. I think in terms of players that missing international duty, that out of these 2 teams that is the most affected, it has to be the Quakes. I mean, they are missing some really key players in their team, and this is also where I've said that resort against Minnesota, where they got a point at home, and also losing the Cali Clasico at home just a couple of days later, it hurts them now because now they have to go on the road against a DC team that I'm pretty sure they have a lot of confidence after getting a big win against the Chicago Fire in the playoff 6 pointer. And you gotta say this is kind of like a playoff 6 pointer too, with both of these teams that are kind of find themselves in a very similar spot in their respective conference. Even though I know this is not a game between 2 teams that are fighting for each other for those playoff positions since they're opposite conference. It still kind of it is with the way that these are crucial points for both of these teams to try to pick up to try and stay above the red line, and we'll see whether if one of these teams. I have a feeling whoever wins this one of them that win this one will probably make the playoffs, and the other probably will not. And this is also where I unfortunately have to mention the fact that it feels like the Quakes are in their usual September collapse, where I've seen this before, where it's always around this time of the season when they do face against teams that is either around them in the playoff race, and they just simply collapse because they can't win those games and end up missing out on the playoffs. But that being said, moving on in the next match is Inter Miami versus Sporting KC. So this officially will be the first game for Inter Miami that they will not have Lionel Messi ever since the Messi era officially kicked off in the Leagues Cup against Cruz Azul. In fact, Inter Miami most likely will not have Messi at least for 3 regular season game now that he's representing for Argentina for the World Cup qualifier, and this is where it really tests Inter Miami. I really think that as much as I know this team has been incredible and they have been in a great run. This is where the biggest test has to be, and I think this might determine whether or not if they do make it to the playoffs. Not when they of course win all those games with Messi and company, because we know they can win those. But it's what happened if Messi not only is not on not available off the bench, but he's not even there in person. Now they are facing against Sporting KC, who has an 8-8-11 record, while Miami's 7-4-14. And just like the previous matchup, I think this is a matchup between two teams that are finding themselves in a similar situation. Miami trying to get up the standings to make it to the playoffs. And keep in mind, they're only 8 points back, and they do have 2 games in hand over DC in terms of them trying to make up for points. And Sporting KC, it's kind of the same thing, although I think it's like a 6 point gap for them to make it to the playoffs right now. But this is also the first ever meeting. It's hard to believe that this is actually the first ever meeting between both of these teams, but that of course is the case. And the players on international duty for Miami, again, this is where Miami fans and certainly those new Miami fans that joined the bandwagon in July of 2023 will call for foul by the league because they're missing by far the most out of any team in terms of players on international duty. In fact, this is probably a record in terms of the most player missing due to international duty for an MLS regular season game. You got Edison Azuna with Dominican Republic, Drake Calendar with the U.S., same with Benjamin Kamaski, Diego Gomez with Paraguay, Sergei Kristov for Ukraine, Joseph Martinez with Venezuela, David Ruiz with Honduras, Robert Taylor for Finland, and then, of course, the GOAT himself, Lionel Messi, with Argentina, which, by the way, he also just scored a walk-off free kick goal this earlier this afternoon. I think it was against Ecuador that he did it. So yeah, like I said, that's a long list of players that is not going to be available for this Miami team. Now for Sporting KC, you got Gadi Kinda representing Israel, and then Marino Yanis with Cyprus. So yeah, again, this is going to be tough. And I will say that this, you might as well just call this Miami 2 versus Sporting KC because of how many players that's missing due to international duty for Inter Miami. But, if they want to make it the playoffs, if they want to have the miraculous run, you just got to think that they have to at least win a game or two during this stretch where they're not going to have Messi. And I think the other good news about this game is the fact that because this game is at home, Miami this season has been really good at home, even before the Messi era. I think that should propel them to get all 3 points. So that being said, I don't know about whether they can use that home field advantage and especially use their fans in terms of a boost, because you know how so far for the past couple of games, Miami games has been sold out pretty much every single game. I'm not sure about this one. I won't be surprised. There's going to be there's going to be some empty seats because again, the sad truth is the fact that the only reason why we've seen Miami games has been sold out is because of the Messi hype and that everybody want to see Messi in person. So when he's not available in this team, I have a feeling there's going to be some empty seats in this one. And again, that's just a hard truth. As much as I don't want to admit it, and even some Miami fans don't want to admit it too. But moving on, we got Minnesota versus the New England Revolution. So both of my team is actually playing during the international break, so I'm definitely not happy about that. But this is actually a makeup game for the game that was that was scheduled on June 21st. I'm not sure why exactly they decided to move this to another date, but nevertheless, Minnesota 9-9-8, while New England 13-8-5. By the way, I forgot to put the time of this game. It's an 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific start. In terms of the all-time meeting, this is only the fifth meeting between both of these teams, and so far Minnesota has not had a good history against New England. They only won 1 out of the 4, with New England winning the other 3. Now, in terms of players on international duty, you got Sunbin Joon for South Korea U23, Team Ipuki with Finland, and Josef Rosales for Honduras. But the good news is, it seemed like Bongi Longwane could potentially make his return in this game, whether off the bench or throw straight into the starting 11, and that's great news for this Minnesota team because I do think that this team does miss Long Wane and his present in these last couple of games. So yeah, it'll be a welcoming return for him in this one. For New England, no Noah Buck, he's with the England U19 team, and then no Christian McCoon with Venezuela. Now, a couple of months ago, I would say this would be a tough game for Minnesota, but I do think that with what's going on with New England and that they're still kind of in disarray right now. off the pitch with the whole Bruce Arena situation. And in terms of on the field situation, they haven't really been playing that well in the last couple of games, even though they're still somehow near the top part of the standings. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've been defending very well, and somehow, despite the fact even losing Petrovic, Earls Edward Jr. has stepped up in a big way to at least hold the fort for a bit. But again, this is not the same New England team that I think people fear a couple of months ago, and that if this Minnesota team want to make sure they really secure themselves in the playoff position, they got to win these home games, and that's been the big Achilles heel this season. I know they won when I'm there, but that was against Colorado, and I know that was a relatively easy win. But again, it was against Colorado. This is going to be a big test because again, I do think that if this team is going to make it to the playoffs, and it is still a when you look at where they are in the standing, they're not completely secure of making the playoffs. And that I do think that if they do want to make it to the playoffs, and even if they want home field advantage, which again I don't know if that's a good thing for this team, consider they have struggled this season at home. They got to win these home games, and this is definitely, I think, a winnable one against a team that hasn't really been playing very well lately. So yeah, we'll see whether they can do so in this one, getting massive points and really start to make Allianz feel a fortress again that is clearly missing this season. But moving on, in the next one, we got the Portland Timbers versus LAFC. So this is a game, for the Timbers. Again, their playoff hope is definitely on life support a little bit. I mean, again, I know were able to come from behind against Seattle, but that was a game they needed to win if they want to spark any last hope of making the playoffs. They face against an LAFC team that is going to be a little bit shorthanded. We always know that when LAFC played during the international break, they're going to be shorthanded no matter what. 11-7-8 is the record for LAFC, while Portland 7-9-11. This game is the only game that's going to be in the West Coast. That it's a late start, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. 7-5-5 is the record for LAFC over the Portland Timbers. And in terms of players on international duty, no Brian Acosta for Honduras, no Miguel Araujo for Peru, and no David Mosquera, who's with the Colombian U23 team. For LAFC, no state debut with the Croatia U21 team, but most importantly, no Denis Bouanga. He's with Gabon national team. No Daniel Maldonado for Honduras, and no Christian Oliveira, who is with Uruguay right now. So yeah, there are some big pieces. Again, Bouanga is going to be a big miss for this team. So yeah, again, for the Timbers, there's a big opportunity to get all 3 points against an LAFC team that is going to be a little bit shorthanded coming in to this game. And again, I do think that if there's any hope for this team to make it to the playoffs, they need to win this one, even if they're facing against a really good team like LAFC. Speaking of LA, moving on into the last game on this board and the only Sunday game is the Galaxy and St. Louis City. So the Galaxy 7-8-10, while St. Louis 15-2-10, as this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific all-time meeting. It was a draw between both of these games. It was a 1-1 draw, if I remember earlier this season when they met at City Park. Players on international duty. Really, this is kind of the matchup where neither of these teams are really affected by international duty. For the Galaxy, Calvin Leardam with Suriname, Eric Zavaleta with El Salvador. But for St. Louis, they get the fortunate honor that they will have nobody on their roster that's going to be missing due to international duty. So I guess that's a good thing when you're an expansion team picking a bunch of these kind of castaway player that are not really on national team duty, and you don't even have to worry about that. So yeah, this should be an interesting matchup. Again, the Galaxy, they have really look good in these past couple of games, trying to make a late charge to make it to playoffs. And I'm gonna say the same thing I said about the Galaxy with the Timbers. I think for the Galaxy, they need to play perfect for the rest of the season if they want to get themselves into the playoffs. Whereas for St. Louis, again, road form has been a problem for this team. They only won twice this season on the road, which is kind of odd because when you look at this St. Louis team and how they play under Bradley Carnell, you would think that they would be better on the road, consider they're a pressing team and a team that don't really like to have possession. That seems to fit more for a team that plays on the road, but they seems to have problems in terms of getting road wins, and getting most of those wins at home this season. Now, the good news for St. Louis is because they're at the top of the Western Conference, it really doesn't matter. Like they don't have to worry about playing on the road if they do finish top of the Western Conference, unless when we get to MLS Cup where they face against the number one team in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, overall, again, this is a big opportunity for the Galaxy to get 3 points against a St. Louis team that's not very good on the road. And again, if they want to make it to the playoffs, they will definitely need to get 3 points in this game. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at all 5 of these games during the international break. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 5 of these games that is happening during the international break. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.